We don't fall in love expecting it to get boring. We don't enter relationships thinking, one day I'll fantasize about someone else. We say things like, only you, forever, I'll never want anyone else. And in that moment, we mean it. But time has its own way of reshaping desire. Monogamy, for many, isn't hard because of love. It's hard because of repetition, because familiarity, while comforting, can dull the very spark that once ignited passion. And so we find ourselves asking questions we didn't expect to ask. Why don't I feel as excited anymore? Why does my mind wander, even though I still care? These questions aren't proof that you're broken. They're proof that you're human. We live in a culture obsessed with the beginning of things, the rush of new love, the intoxicating high of attraction, the romance of the chase. But few of us are ever taught how to stay in love, how to cultivate desire inside stability, how to keep choosing one person, even after we've memorized the curve of their back, the sound of their footsteps, the way they sip their morning coffee. The philosopher Alain de Botton once said, "Love is a skill." And monogamy, real, enduring monogamy, demands that skill more than most things. It demands that we fight against our instincts for novelty, our craving for intensity, our fear of missing out. Because here's the hard truth: monogamy is not natural. It's not unnatural either, but it's certainly not effortless. We are wired for both connection and variety. Evolutionary psychology tells us that humans developed pair bonding for survival and social stability. But it also tells us that sexual curiosity didn't vanish when commitment began. So, when people struggle with monogamy, it's not always because something's wrong with their partner. Sometimes, it's because desire is a creature of unpredictability, and long-term relationships are built on routine. But routine is not the enemy. It just means desire needs to be fed differently. Still, no one talks about this. Instead, we shame ourselves for craving others. We suppress fantasies. We pretend we're satisfied when we're not. And over time, silence becomes resentment. The desire we once freely gave becomes duty. And duty, no matter how well-intentioned, is a poor substitute for passion. This is the secret loneliness inside happy relationships. Two people who genuinely care for each other, but who are no longer touched by the fire they once shared. And because everything looks fine on the outside, the vacations, the family dinners, the anniversaries, no one asks the hard questions, but they echo in the quiet. Is this all there is? Is something wrong with me for wanting more? The philosopher Søren Kierkegaard wrote, "Anxiety is the dizziness of freedom, and in modern relationships, we are dizzy with options. The freedom to leave, the freedom to cheat, the freedom to explore. But with that freedom comes confusion and guilt, and the overwhelming responsibility of figuring out what desire means when you're supposed to already have everything. So what do we do with this? Do we suppress it and stay silent? Do we risk everything to chase excitement? Or do we begin to speak, honestly, awkwardly, vulnerably, about what it means to stay sexually alive in a long-term bond? The answer isn't simple, but the conversation is necessary, because monogamy isn't about denying desire. It's about working with it, honoring it, keeping it alive not through suppression, but through conscious effort, through curiosity, through reinvention, through remembering that the person you're with is not a fixed entity, but someone capable of becoming again, just like you. And when we forget that, monogamy becomes a cage. But when we remember it, monogamy can become a dance, not of limitation, but of choosing, again and again, not because you have to, but because, in the end, you still want to. It starts quietly, not with betrayal, not even with intention, just a glance, a daydream, a moment when your attention drifts to someone else, not out of malice, but out of curiosity, a flicker of attraction, a what if, and you tell yourself it means nothing, but deep down, it unsettles you, because in a committed relationship, we're told that love should eliminate all desire for others, that once you've found your person, the rest of the world fades, that real love is exclusive, total, consuming. But what if that's a myth? Psychotherapist Esther Perel argues that love and desire do not always live in harmony. Love seeks closeness, predictability, and safety, but desire craves distance, mystery, and the unknown. And so the very things that make a relationship feel secure can also make it feel sexually stagnant. We try to keep the fire alive by scheduling date nights, dressing up, trying new things. But underneath those efforts is a harder truth. You can love someone deeply and still feel a lack of erotic energy, because passion doesn't feed on comfort, it feeds on tension, contrast, the unknown. And in long-term monogamy, the unknown slowly disappears. So what happens? Many people begin to fantasize about strangers, about old lovers, about experiences that would shatter the rules of their relationship. These fantasies are often not about cheating, but about reclaiming parts of themselves that feel dormant. The forbidden becomes a mirror, a reminder that we are still capable of wanting, of being wanted, but instead of exploring that within the relationship, we bury it. We assume it's wrong. We feel shame, and that shame creates distance, not just from our partner, but from ourselves. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "The serpent that cannot shed its skin perishes." Desire needs shedding, renewal. It needs space to evolve, and when we deny that evolution, we lose not just sexual spark, but pieces of our aliveness. Still, we hesitate, because talking about desire outside the relationship feels like betrayal. Even saying, "I'm not turned on by you anymore," feels cruel. So we say nothing. We perform closeness. We stay loyal in action, but drift emotionally and erotically. And then comes the split, not always in the form of an affair, sometimes in silence, in avoidance, in lives that run parallel but never touch, in polite conversations, in separate bedrooms, in marriages where both partners are fine, but neither is free. This is what philosopher Erich Fromm warned about when he said that modern love often confuses having with being. We have a partner, so we assume we have love, but being in love requires action, risk, vulnerability, the courage to reveal what you want, even when it's uncomfortable. But we fear that, because what if our partner doesn't feel the same? What if they're content with how things are? What if bringing it up makes everything worse? So we keep choosing silence, and that silence becomes the real betrayal, not of them, but of ourselves. Long-term desire is not impossible, but it is inconvenient. It asks us to have hard conversations, to confront our boredom, our fantasies, our longings, to take responsibility for our own erotic aliveness, instead of blaming our partner for its absence. And sometimes, the answer is renewal, a new chapter, a deeper connection. Other times, the answer is goodbye, not out of hate, but out of honesty. The philosopher Simone Weil once wrote, "To be rooted is perhaps the most important and least recognized need of the human soul, but roots can strangle just as easily as they support. When commitment becomes confinement, love begins to starve." So ask yourself, is your relationship built on aliveness or on habit? Are you staying because you're growing together, or because it's easier than starting over? Are you silencing your desire, or are you learning how to speak it with care? Monogamy doesn't have to die, but it does have to adapt, because the desire that doesn't die won't disappear. It will wait, in the background, quiet, patient, until one day it finds another way out. So, what do you do when love remains, but desire vanishes? When the relationship still works on the surface, the shared mortgage, the parenting, the routine, but something essential has gone quiet beneath it? The truth is, most people don't leave because they no longer love their partner. They leave because they no longer love who they've become inside the relationship. They feel muted, flattened, starved of aliveness. In his book, The Art of Loving, Erich Fromm wrote that love is not just a feeling, it's a decision, an act, a practice. To keep love alive, both people must continue choosing it, but choosing it fully, not just out of loyalty, but out of longing. And if that longing disappears, what's left? Often, people choose to stay, not out of joy, but fear. Fear of being alone, fear of hurting the other person, fear of what it might mean to admit that something isn't working anymore, fear of change. But as the philosopher Alain de Botton notes, we often expect love to save us, when in reality, it asks us to grow up. Real love includes grief. It includes choosing honesty over comfort. It includes the radical courage to admit when something is no longer alive, even when everything else looks perfect. Some couples do the hard work. They open up, go to therapy, rekindle not just romance, but erotic curiosity. They reintroduce mystery, space, even tension, all the ingredients that desire needs to breathe again. They confront the death of who they were, and slowly, co-create something new. Other couples, however, reach a different kind of truth, that their love is real, but no longer romantic, that their partnership has become something else, a deep friendship, a co-parenting bond, a mutual respect, but not a love that nourishes every part of them. And then they face the hardest question of all. Is this version of love enough for me? Can I grieve the passion and stay? Can I honor the history and still go? Can I love this person and still choose myself? These are not selfish questions. They are essential ones. Because to stay in a relationship where your spirit is shrinking, just to preserve an image of success, is not noble. It's a slow form of self-abandonment. Nietzsche once said, "The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe." In love, the tribe is the myth of forever, the pressure to stick it out, the fear of failure. But you are allowed to reimagine your story. You are allowed to want more, not more partners, but more depth, more truth, more fire. Monogamy is not the enemy. Stagnation is. The couples who thrive in long-term commitment aren't the ones who never struggle, but the ones who remain curious about each other, about themselves, about what love can become when it stops pretending and starts evolving. And maybe that's the real lesson here, that monogamy, like desire, requires bravery. Bravery to speak, bravery to change, bravery to let go, or to begin again. You don't have to have all the answers, but you do have to ask better questions. Not, why don't I want them anymore? But, who have I become in this love? And is that person fully alive? Not, is it wrong to fantasize about others? But, what is my desire trying to tell me about what I need? Love isn't always a story of perfect alignment. Sometimes it's a story of evolution, of parting, of staying with new eyes. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is stop pretending.